Het is misschien wel het meest omstreden bestrijdingsmiddel ter wereld. Glyfosaat. Maar onder boeren is de onkruidverdelger buitengewoon populair.
So the alternative to a product of glyphosate and not being able to grow a crop is starvation. So, pick your poison.
Uit proefdieronderzoek blijkt een verband met kanker. Toch heeft Europa het middel onlangs opnieuw voor 10 jaar goedgekeurd. In het Europese beoordelingsdossier duikt de naam op van een Amerikaanse wetenschapper.
Hier kom je in de samenvatting van het glyfosaat-toelatingsdossier een Kenny Crump tegen.
We ontdekken dat deze statisticus hechtere banden heeft met de glyfosaatfabrikant dan hij doet voorkomen.
I have never worked for a glyphosate-industrie. People that make glyphosate didn't pay me to write my papers. No one paid me to write my papers.
It's not that hard to find scientists who are willing to do your dirty work.
Zembla onderzoekt de invloed van de pesticide-industrie op de toelating van glyfosaat.
I love glyfosaat.
Dat was een mooi polariserend tweetje, denk ik.
Je zegt ook hup glyfosaat, zeg je ook.
Monsanto has wielded out their whole PR machine because at the end of the day, what they're trying to make sure of is that Roundup remains on the market so they can continue to make billions of dollars.
We zijn in Central Valley, aan de Amerikaanse westkust, op 3 uur rijden van San Francisco. Dit is de Amerikaanse versie van de hoogproductieve, intensieve landbouw. Boomgaarden en plantages zover het oog reikt.
I won't say I'm not concerned about what we do because this is a family business. I'm here, my wife's here, my son's here.
Gary Martin is de voorman van de Vereniging van Katoenboeren in Californië.
Tom, this is my son, Daniel.
Morning. Hi, nice to meet you. How are you doing? I'm fine.
Our job is to deliver clean cotton. I'm yielding 1,700 to 2,000 pounds to the acre.
And how much do you need for just one shirt?
Half a pound.
Half a pound.
So we could probably make a lot of shirts.
I think so.
Yeah. That's the cotton boll. And it gets spun into a yarn, and that yarn gets tightened up into a thread. And once it's into a thread, then they can weave a fabric. And once the fabric is woven, then they can cut and sew whatever product it is they want to make.
Volgens Martin zijn hoge opbrengsten alleen mogelijk wanneer hij zijn gewassen beschermt tegen schimmels, bacteriën en onkruid.
What's in the tank?
Glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
A mixture of water. We have genetically modified plants that are tolerant of it, and so we use it. It's reasonably priced compared to a lot of site-specific herbicides that are limited on the plants they work on, where the broadness of the effect of the glyphosate is a great value to us.
In 1974 brengt Monsanto onkruidverdelger glyfosaat op de markt onder de merknaam Roundup. Onder boeren is het meteen ongekend populair. Zeker wanneer Monsanto ook nog eens genetisch gemodificeerde gewassen ontwikkelt die resistent zijn tegen het gif. Alles gaat dood, behalve de plant. Glyfosaat is het meest verkochte bestrijdingsmiddel ter wereld. Maar de laatste jaren komt de onkruidverdelger steeds meer ter discussie te staan. Want is het wel veilig?
We don't do any more than we have to. We try to keep exposure at a minimum. We apply things below label when we can. But am I a scientist? No. I'm a farmer. This state has approved this product to be used here. And with the heavy regulations in California, if they're allowing us to use it, because there are plenty of products they don't allow us to use, I believe they're safe.
Terwijl de Martins het onkruid doodspuiten tussen hun katoenplanten en pistasbomen, hebben duizenden andere Amerikaanse gebruikers Monsanto aansprakelijk gesteld. Omdat ze zeggen ziekte zijn geworden door Roundup. De multinational heeft inmiddels voor miljarden dollars schikkingen getroffen.
Why are there settlements?
Well, what do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think people can get sick from a lot of things, and people do get sick. And there's a risk. A landscaper for a city school district used glyphosate all his life, and he ends up with cancer and dies. Well, I don't know what his shoes were. I don't know what his pants were. I don't know what kind of a spray bottle he used. I don't know how he used it all those years. And so somebody gets sick and dies, that's bad.
Op 16 november 2023 valt hier in Brussel een belangrijk besluit. De Europese Commissie keurt dan glyfosaat opnieuw voor 10 jaar goed. Je denkt misschien bij zoiets belangrijks als de goedkeuring van pesticiden spelen alleen wetenschappelijke argumenten een rol. Iets is veilig of iets is niet veilig. Maar zo simpel is het niet. Fabrikanten proberen de besluitvorming te beïnvloeden. En daarin gaan ze, zo blijkt uit ons onderzoek, heel ver.
Om beter te begrijpen hoe grote bedrijven invloed uitoefenen op wet en regelgeving, gaan we naar Naomi Oreskes. Zij schreef er een baanbrekend boek over, Merchants of Doubt.
It's called Merchants of Doubt because that's what these people do. They sell doubt. The term comes originally from an infamous tobacco industry memo, which was revealed in lawsuits in the United States, where one tobacco industry executive wrote in black and white on paper, doubt is our product because it's the most effective means of creating doubt about the science, of making people think the science is unsettled and therefore they continue smoking. One of the things that's great about science, one of the things that's admirable about science is that it's a learning process. And that means that it's driven by curiosity and it's driven by what we could call healthy skepticism, that scientists don't take things on faith. They say, where's the evidence? Show me the evidence, prove to me that this claim is true. And that's a good thing.
So doubt is part of science?
Correct, it's part and parcel of doing scientific work. But what the tobacco industry realized was that they could flip that on its head and use doubt against science to say, oh, but you're not really sure. You haven't really proven this. What about this study? What about this person who disagrees? And to use that to undermine what was, in many cases, very solid, very robust science. Come on, girl, come on.
Oreskes is hoogleraar wetenschapsgeschiedenis aan de Universiteit van Harvard.
There you go.
We willen weten, gebruikt de pesticide-industrie twijfel ook als marketinginstrument?
Glyphosate is a very profitable product. Monsanto staked a lot of its reputation and a lot of its profits on this product and has had very aggressive marketing of glyphosate, and they have consistently insisted that glyphosate was safe. But we have scientific evidence to suggest that it may not be safe. And as you know, a big debate about whether it was a probable or possible carcinogen.
Monsanto did everything, whether it's fighting it in the press, whether it's fighting us in scientific circles, or whether it's fighting it in court. They're doing everything in their power in order to keep Roundup on the market. When you set on a path to take on one of the largest corporations in the world, you have to have a little bit of tenacity and determination. We had a very long, thought-out battle before we got to the courthouse steps.
In 2019 wint advocaat Jennifer Moore in de federale rechtbank van San Francisco een van de belangrijkste rechtszaken tegen Monsanto. De zaak van meneer Hardeman.
I remember when sitting there at trial, along with my co-counsel Amy Wagstaff, these two women who took on this giant, multinational corporation, and they had at any time probably 40 lawyers in the courtroom against us. And we beat them.
For the second time, a jury has found Monsanto's Roundup weed killer played a role in causing cancer.
A jury awarding $80 million to a man who says Roundup weed killer caused his cancer. With 70-year-old Edwin Hardeman, who says that Roundup was a major factor in his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
This is a big loss for Bayer and Monsanto. It proves that juries are being convinced that Roundup is causing cancer.
I was the lead negotiator for settlements of 14,000 cancer victims in 2020, and then that led to settlements where Monsanto and Bayer acknowledged they paid over $11 billion to cancer victims in the United States alone.
Volgens Bayer, nu eigenaar van Monsanto, zijn de schikkingen op geen enkele wijze een schuldbekentenis.
Bayer paid over $11 billion in settlements for a product they're now saying there's no evidence it causes cancer. I mean, come on. So how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Feel good.
Rodney Berry uit West Kentucky was een van de eerste cliënten van Jennifer Moore.
Don't take scans anymore, so...
Oh, that's great news.
Yeah. Lucky to be alive. Woke up one morning and my ear was on fire. It was red as anything red you could ever see. Couldn't touch it. I mean, just looked like it was going to bleed. It was that red.
And what did the doctor say?
He thought he was shocked I was walking. I had that many tumors.
All over?
All over.
No, really?
Mm-hmm.
All over?
Had 7.
I didn't know if we'd be standing here 7 years ago.
Most people thought I'd be dead. Worst thing I had a tumor in my kidney, and they had to go in and cut it out, and that was horrible.
Als jonge man werkt Barry zowel op de boerderij als in een winkel voor landbouwproducten.
1974. Monsanto rep, I won't call his name, but he walked in there and set a jug on the counter, and I happened to be at the store that day, and he said, this is going to be the future of the ag business. And it's Roundup. And this flat said it's the safest thing that's ever been produced in this world, and you can actually drink it if you had to.
And that's what stood out to me. So I remember Rodney telling me that story of how Monsanto first introduced the product to the farming community. And so I heard it directly from Rodney first. And that's what led us to be filing the lawsuits.
Rodney Berry is ervan overtuigd dat hij ziek is geworden door jarenlange blootstelling aan glyfosaat. Tijdens het spuiten op het land en in het magazijn. Hij klaagt Monsanto aan. Na een lange procedure treft de multinational een schikking met Berry.
The cancer guy on me says take it off the market. The farmer side of me says if we don't have it, what are we going to use to raise a crop? Because the weeds, if the weeds take the crop, then...
Na verschillende operaties en een zware chemotherapie gaat het nu goed met Berry. Hij werkt weer in de winkel.
Are you still selling Roundup?
Yeah.
You're still selling Roundup?
Yeah. You have to if you're in the ag retail business in the United States. Have to. Maybe I don't touch it, but I got people at work back there to do it, yeah. That's pretty sad, isn't it?
Ondanks de miljarden dollars aan schikkingen wordt glyfosaat nog steeds volop verkocht. Terwijl wetenschappers van het internationale kankeragentschap IARC in 2015 al stelden dat het middel waarschijnlijk kankerverwekkend is.
IARC is the International Agency for Research on Cancer. It is an arm of the World Health Organization.
Whose job it is to review the scientific evidence and determine whether or not something is carcinogenic. And so they're the people who have proven or have concluded that, for example, asbestos is a known carcinogen. Tobacco is a known carcinogen.
And IARC assembled back in 2015 a group of scientists from all over the world who are not attached to industry, who are not hired by Monsanto. These are independent people, and they gather together to evaluate all of the data over the years of glyphosate. And based on their review of all of the data, they determined that there was evidence to show it is a probable human carcinogen.
Deze klassificatie, waarschijnlijk kankerverwekkend, is slecht nieuws voor Monsanto. Hoe het bedrijf hierop reageert, blijkt uit interne stukken die in aanloop naar de Hardeman-rechtszaak worden opgevraagd. Dit zijn de zogeheten Monsanto Papers.
It's millions and millions of pages, and then we have to sift through that to try to find, the smoking gun, so to speak.
What the so-called Monsanto documents show is that the industry, Monsanto in particular, put enormous pressure on the scientists involved and in the whole debate around it to prevent glyphosate from being interpreted as a carcinogen.
Iemand die de Monsanto Papers ook uitvoerig heeft bestudeerd is Gary Ruskin van onderzoekscollectief US Right to Know.
There's a big story behind this. Monsanto, for months and months, was very worried when they found out that IARC was going to review glyphosate because they knew from their own research that there's problems with cancer and liver disease and endocrine disruption and other things.
Al sinds de jaren 80 blijkt uit proefdieronderzoek, uitgevoerd door de industrie zelf, dat sommige muizen kanker krijgen na blootstelling aan glyfosaat.
So they prepared very extensively to try to have a campaign to what they called orchestrate outcry. That's a quote from their documents, in order to try to defend and protect glyphosate. So here's Monsanto's public relations plan.
And what does that mean, orchestrate outcry?
It means to have 1,000 voices to speak the same words, which are, this is not true, and defend glyphosate.
Protect the reputation and FTO of Roundup by communicating the safety of glyphosate. So, you see things like this all the time. They're not trying to find out the truth. They don't say we're going to do everything we can to find out the truth about this product, and if it's dangerous, then we'll take it off the market, which is what a responsible company should do. Instead, it's we're going to communicate the safety. So the assumption is up front. It's not based on the science. It's based upon trying to protect the reputation of the company.
Doelwit van het Monsanto-offensief is de Duitse wetenschapper Kurt Streif.
We moeten hieraf, Freiburg Zuid.
Hij was verantwoordelijk voor het onderzoeksprogramma van IARC.
Monsanto put out a statement saying this is junk science, this is cherry picking. It was the most massive attack ever. And
really?
Yeah, also the longest lasting attack.
Stronger than when you looked into tobacco, secondhand smoke, and stuff like that?
Yes, and stronger than meat consumption, stronger than whatever. The colleagues received letters asking them to release all kinds of emails and information. If you decline to provide the files, we request and instruct you immediately to take all reasonable steps.
De advocaten van Monsanto eisen inzage in interne IARC-documenten als opmaat naar juridische procedures.
There was a lawyer from Monsanto calling and he would urgently want to speak with me. Of course, it was meant to intimidate, because they immediately realized that this could impact their business.
Er verschijnen kritische artikelen over IARC, waaronder een stuk van een Amerikaanse onderzoeker, Henry Miller. En die naam duikt ook op in de Monsanto Papers.
When Monsanto says something about glyphosate, nobody's going to believe them because they have such an enormous conflict of interest. So they especially want to find third-party academics who have a veneer of credibility and speak Monsanto's words through their mouths. So here's one of the more famous examples of ghostwriting. It's about a guy named Henry Miller who wrote an article for Forbes basically saying that IARC was incorrect and that glyphosate is safe. And so here's Eric Sachs from Monsanto asking, Henry, are you interested in writing more on the topic of the IARC panel? And then Henry Miller writes back, I would be if I could start from a high-quality draft. Eric Sachs from Monsanto writes back, well, we've nearly done. We'll send it to you by tomorrow. And then here's our draft. Still quite rough, but it's a good start for your magic. This is a form of lying to the scientific community and to the public, where we find out, oh, no, it wasn't really these independent scientists who wrote the paper. It was actually Monsanto scientists who wrote the paper. And they have huge conflicts of interest, but we didn't tell you about that.
Dit fenomeen heet ghostwriting. Monsanto schrijft mee aan meerdere wetenschappelijke artikelen waarin de giftigheid van glyfosaat wordt ontkracht.
But we would be keeping the cost down by us doing the writing. meaning Monsanto doing the writing.
We ghostwrite the exposure tox and genotox sections. So in other words, these people who work for Monsanto are going to ghostwrite these articles, and then they're going to find scientists who will be willing to put their names on it. So that's just straight out corruption, just straight out corruption.